The Crimean War was a disaster for Russia. It exposed the empire's vulnerabilities, its economy was weak, and its military was outdated. Russia faced a long and difficult road to recovery. The Tsar, Alexander II, knew that reforms were necessary. He had to make difficult choices. Alaska, though vast, was a drain on resources. The war had drained the Russian treasury, and modernization efforts were expensive. The cost of maintaining Alaska was significant. It was a remote and difficult territory to govern. The fur trade, once lucrative, was in decline. Russia needed to cut its losses and focus on internal problems. Selling Alaska, however undesirable, seemed like a necessary sacrifice. The money from the sale could be used to strengthen Russia. The Tsar and his advisors believed that the sale was in the best interest of the nation. It was a difficult decision, but one that they felt was necessary for Russia's future. Alaska, a vast peninsula stretching westward from North America, was a challenging territory. Its sheer size made it difficult to administer. The climate was harsh, and the native populations were often resistant to Russian rule. The fur trade, the primary source of income, was dwindling with the overhunting of sea otters. The Russian-American company, chartered to manage the territory, faced constant financial struggles. The threat of British expansion from the south added to the pressure. The Crimean War had demonstrated the difficulty of defending such a remote possession. Russia, already facing economic hardship, realized that holding on to Alaska might invite further conflict. The cost of maintaining a military presence in Alaska was prohibitive. Communication lines were long and unreliable. Supplies were difficult and expensive to transport. The Tsar and his advisors began to see Alaska as more of a liability than an asset. They began to explore the possibility of selling the territory. Russia had long been wary of British imperial ambitions. The two empires had clashed in the Crimean War, and tensions remained high. The British presence in Canada, bordering Alaska to the east, was a constant concern. Russia feared that Britain might try to seize Alaska, especially if they perceived Russian weakness. The idea of selling Alaska to the United States began to take shape. The Americans were a rising power, and they were hostile to British influence in North America. Selling Alaska to the United States would serve two purposes. It would provide Russia with much-needed cash, and it would also create a buffer between Russia and Britain. The Americans had already purchased Alaska's neighbor to the east. The Louisiana Purchase from Napoleon's France in 1803 had greatly expanded the young nation. It was a clear indication of American expansionist ambitions. Russia saw an opportunity to play the two rivals against each other. The United States was initially hesitant about purchasing Alaska. Many Americans were unsure about the value of such a remote and seemingly inhospitable land. Many Americans saw it as a frozen wasteland, a place with little to offer in terms of resources or strategic advantage. However, Secretary of State William Seward was a strong advocate for the purchase. He had a vision that extended beyond the immediate perceptions of the public. Seward saw Alaska's strategic importance. He believed that its location could provide the United States with significant advantages in terms of trade and military presence. It would give the United States control of the Arctic, and he believed it would eventually become a valuable territory. Seward foresaw the potential for natural resources and new opportunities for exploration. Seward also saw the purchase as a way to strengthen ties with Russia. He understood the importance of international alliances and saw this as a strategic move. The two countries had been on opposite sides of the Crimean War, but they shared a common enemy in Great Britain. This common ground provided a basis for cooperation. Seward believed that a closer relationship with Russia would benefit the United States in the long run. He saw it as a way to counterbalance British influence. Negotiations for the purchase of Alaska were conducted in secret. Both sides were cautious and wanted to avoid any interference from other nations. Neither side wanted to alert the British to their plans. The secrecy was crucial to ensure the deal went through without external pressures. On March 30, 1867, the Treaty of Cession was signed in Washington, D.C. This marked a significant moment in American history. The United States agreed to pay Russia $7.2 million for Alaska. This amount, though substantial at the time, was considered a bargain for the vast territory. It was a bargain price. The acquisition of Alaska would later prove to be one of the most significant and strategic purchases in American history. Section 5. Turning East, Russia's Siberian and Far Eastern Ambitions. The decision to sell Alaska was part of a larger strategic shift by Russia, a move that would redefine its geopolitical focus. The Tsar and his advisors were increasingly focused on consolidating their holdings in Siberia and the Far East, regions they believed held immense potential. These regions were rich in resources such as minerals, timber, and furs, and offered the potential for significant economic growth and development. Russia needed to focus its attention on developing these territories to secure its future as a major power. Alaska was simply too far away from the centers of Russian power, making it difficult to manage and govern effectively. It was too difficult and expensive to defend, especially given the vast distances and harsh conditions. Selling it to the United States allowed Russia to free up resources and focus on more strategically important areas. These resources could be used to pursue its ambitions in Asia, where Russia saw greater opportunities for influence and expansion. The sale of Alaska marked the end of Russia's involvement in North America, a significant turning point in its history. The Tsar believed that Russia's future lay in the east, where vast, untapped lands awaited development. He launched a comprehensive program of modernization and expansion in Siberia, aiming to transform the region into a thriving part of the empire. New railroads were built, industries were developed, and millions of Russians migrated eastward, seeking new opportunities. The sale of Alaska was a key step in Russia's transformation into a Eurasian power, reshaping its identity and ambitions for the future. Section 6. Manifest Destiny, America's westward march reaches the Pacific. The purchase of Alaska was also in line with the United States' own expansionist ambitions. The doctrine of manifest destiny, popular in the 19th century, held that the United States had a divine right to expand its territory from coast to coast. The acquisition of Alaska, though not geographically contiguous, fit into this broader narrative of American expansionism. The U.S. had already reached the Pacific Ocean with the settlement of California and the Oregon Treaty with Britain. Alaska, bordering the Pacific Ocean to the north, represented a further extension of American reach. It also provided access to potentially valuable resources such as timber, minerals, and fisheries. The purchase of Alaska was initially met with skepticism by many Americans. They dubbed it Seward's Folly and Seward's Icebox. However, the strategic significance of Alaska would become clear in the 20th century. Section 7. The Monroe Doctrine, a hemispheric shield and a strategic opportunity. The Monroe Doctrine, articulated by President James Monroe in 1823, declared that the Americas were closed to further European colonization. This bold proclamation was a significant moment in American foreign policy, setting the stage for the United States to assert its influence over the Western Hemisphere. While primarily aimed at preventing European powers from intervening in Latin America, the doctrine also had far-reaching implications for North America. It was a clear message to European nations that any attempts to interfere in the affairs of the American continents would be viewed as acts of aggression. The purchase of Alaska from Russia in 1867 could be seen as a strategic move to further solidify U.S. dominance in the region and prevent any future European territorial ambitions. This acquisition was not just about land, it was about securing a strategic advantage. By acquiring Alaska from Russia, the U.S. was effectively removing a European power from the continent and reinforcing the principles of the Monroe Doctrine. This move was a clear demonstration of the United States' commitment to its policy of hemispheric defense. This move aligned with the U.S. goal of minimizing European influence in the Western Hemisphere and solidifying its own position as the dominant power. The acquisition of Alaska was a significant step in the U.S. broader strategy of territorial expansion and consolidation. The purchase also served as a symbolic statement about the shifting balance of power on the global stage. It was a clear indication that the United States was emerging as a formidable force in international affairs. The United States was emerging as a major player in international affairs, while Russia was consolidating its focus on its vast territories in Europe and Asia. This shift in focus allowed the U.S. to strengthen its influence in the Western Hemisphere, furthering its strategic interests and reinforcing the principles of the Monroe Doctrine. Section 8, a win-win, the enduring legacy of the Alaska Purchase. In retrospect, the sale of Alaska was a mutually beneficial transaction. Russia received a much-needed influx of cash, It also removed a potential point of conflict with Great Britain. The United States, for a bargain price, acquired a territory that would prove to be rich in resources and of great strategic importance. The purchase of Alaska solidified the United States' position as a Pacific power. It also paved the way for the country's eventual emergence as a global superpower. Alaska's strategic importance became evident during World War II. It served as a vital link in the supply chain to the Soviet Union. Today, Alaska is a thriving state with a diverse economy and a rich cultural heritage. The legacy of the Alaska Purchase is a testament to the enduring power of diplomacy and the benefits of peaceful cooperation between nations, even former rivals.